They looked at her as if she had just entered a world that wasn't meant for her. As the glass doors slid open, Serena Wallace entered the grand lobby of the Orion Luxe Hotel in downtown Chicago. Outside, the cold was bone-cutting. Inside, the space shimmered in warm gold lighting laced with the subtle scent of luxury perfume drifting through the air. Everything radiated perfection until she appeared. No one noticed her first few steps. No designer handbag, no glittering high heels, no doorman, no greeting of welcome ma'am. Only the passing glance of Martin Graves. The man behind the front desk lingered for more than a beat. A glance. A silent judgment. Serena wore a fitted black t-shirt, dark jeans, and simple sneakers. Her hair was tied back neatly with no styling or flair. She walked alone, carrying no luggage enough to make the room fall into an eerie quiet. Martin raised an eyebrow as she approached. His eyes scanned her like they were searching for some flaw, some deviation from the standard, to confirm his suspicion. "What do you need?" he asked. No smile, no offer of assistance. "Penthouse suite. Booked under the name Wallace." "Serena," replied her voice calm and steady. Martin froze. "Penthouse. Are you sure you're at the right hotel?" It wasn't a question of verification. It was a denial wrapped in the thinnest veil of politeness. A subtle rejection laced with an assumption someone like her didn't belong in this place. Serena didn't respond. She opened her wallet, pulled out a black card and ID, and placed them on the counter. Every movement was slow, deliberate, like she had done this thousands of times elsewhere. Martin picked up the card with 2 fingers, afraid of touching something tainted. He glanced at it, then looked back at Serena. This time the look went deeper, but not to understand her. Only to reaffirm how could someone who looked like that possess something like this. And in that instant, Serena knew the fear she had once hoped was gone was still there. Not in their eyes, but in the thoughts behind them. And in that very moment she understood the test had begun. She was here to audit discrimination within her hotel chain. And no one, least of all those behind the desk, realized they were about to walk into an earthquake far greater than they imagined. Martin turned the black card between his fingers as if weighing its authenticity. But the truth was, he had made up his mind before touching it. "Weird," he muttered just loudly enough for Serena to hear. "This looks suspicious." Without hesitation, Tammy, the receptionist next to him, pressed the intercom button. Her voice rang out through the lobby speakers, security to the front desk. Possible fake guest attempting to check into the penthouse. Serena didn't flinch, didn't blink. She tilted her head slightly the way someone turned away from a sudden gust of wind. She had been here before, not at Orion, but in places with faces like Martin's, smiles like Tammy's, and attitudes that played like a broken record on loop. From the left, Derek Lynn, a younger front desk clerk, stood with arms folded, smirking. People try fake cards with random names all the time, hoping we won't check. It's like a trick they think will work. Serena inhaled slowly. Her eyes never left Martin, the man who now looked at her not as a person, but as a problem. "What exactly are you trying to do?" Martin asked, his tone openly provocative. "You think just showing up with a pretty card is enough?" Serena shook her head gently. "I'm not here to argue. I'm here to check in." Martin laughed, not politely but mockingly. He turned to Derek. "Lock that card in the safe. Don't let anyone else see it." Derek nodded, pulled open a drawer behind the desk, and retrieved a small steel safe. With exaggerated flair, he placed Serena's card inside, shut the door, and spun the lock. Done. Company property, held for verification. Tammy nodded in agreement. "If you don't cooperate, we can ask you to leave the hotel." She didn't get to finish her sentence before a woman's voice called out from across the lobby. It wasn't loud, but it was crystal clear. "I'm recording all of this." Every head turned toward Maya Tron, a well-known travel blogger standing with her boyfriend. Maya held her phone high, already recording. Bystanders began paying attention. Some guests pulled out their phones, pretending to check messages, but their eyes never left the front desk. Her boyfriend Jonas had already started live streaming. His voice came through even and firm, tinged with disbelief. "We're witnessing something unbelievable at the Orion Luxe in Chicago. A black woman was denied service despite having a confirmed reservation, a black card, and a valid ID. They just confiscated her card." Serena stood tall, calm. But with each word, something tightened inside her, not from rage, but from recognition. She knew exactly what this was, and she was ready for it. She pulled out her phone. No calls, no social media. She opened a private internal app. "Jenna," she said into her Bluetooth earpiece, voice low and firm. "Activate recording log. Begin video. Timestamp 1412. Tag as critical discrimination incident." On the other end, Jenna Taylor, her executive assistant, replied instantly, "Confirmed. System is live." Martin frowned. "What are you doing?" Serena didn't blink. "Protecting my property. And my dignity." Martin scoffed. "Sounds like a line from a movie." Serena didn't respond. But just then, another female employee, Natalie Gomez, the clerk responsible for VIP data and guest profiles, emerged from the back. Natalie looked at Serena, then turned to Martin, hesitant, but clear. I saw her name in the system this morning. Serena Wallace, penthouse suite, black VIP card. There's even an override directive for executive-level clearance." 3 seconds of silence followed. 3 long seconds where Martin had no words. Jonas whispered into the live stream, "This is the turning point. She's not just a guest. She runs this entire hotel." Serena didn't smile. Her voice, low and ringing like a gavel, broke the air, "And you just targeted the wrong person." The test was over, and the result was this. An entire system had just ripped off its mask, in front of hundreds of eyes watching and recording. The air in the lobby felt frozen. Martin still stood there, hand resting on the desk, but his posture had begun to hunch ever so slightly. Perhaps he sensed something shifting, yet still clung to the fragile power he once used to exclude those who didn't fit the standard. "You're the owner," he asked, his voice hoarse, not from shock, but from fear. Serena didn't answer. She strolled toward the front desk where the steel safe sat silently holding the card they had confiscated like contraband. Inside it was the proof of something they never wanted to believe, that power doesn't always come with the image they expect. To her right, Derek Lynn, who had locked the card away, took a half-step back as if trying to distance himself from Martin. But Serena's eyes didn't leave a single one of them. She looked at all 3, Martin, Tammy, and Derek, as someone looks at a last chance slipping away. "You've just confiscated my property, unlawfully detained it, and humiliated me in front of dozens of guests." Her voice remained even, not angry, but sharp as a scalpel. Tammy stammered, We didn't know you were." "Were what?" Serena cut in. "Black. Wearing a t-shirt with no logo. Arriving without a manager in tow. What exactly were you about to say?" Tammy lowered her head. There was no answer clean enough to survive that moment. Beside them, Natalie, who had stood frozen since her revelation, tightened her grip on the clipboard. She swallowed hard. Something inside her was growing, not fear, but a rising awareness of right and wrong, the kind she had tucked away too long, working under Martin. Martin, trying to regain control of the moment, attempted a calmer tone. "Ms. Wallace, if you are who Natalie says you are, then I apologize for the misunderstanding, but we do have a responsibility to verify unusual transactions." Serena smiled faintly at him, but there was no forgiveness in it. You didn't verify. You judged. You didn't ask my name, didn't check the system or authenticate a single thing. You looked at me and made a decision. The wrong one. Jonas was still live streaming, panned the camera toward Martin, and spoke softly into his mic. We're witnessing a textbook case of appearance-based discrimination in luxury service. And this time, they picked the wrong person. At that, Serena pulled out her phone, placed it on the counter, and switched it to speaker. From the other end, Jenna, her executive assistant, spoke calmly. Ms. Wallace, full audio-video live stream and personnel report have been activated. The legal team is monitoring in real time. Martin panicked. Wait, this is a misunderstanding. I can explain. I didn't come to hear explanations, Serena interrupted. I came to observe, and now I've seen enough. She took one measured breath, then spoke crisp and unwavering. Jenna. Proceed with personnel action. Revoke access credentials for Martin Graves, Tammy Rhodes, and Derek Lean disable employee codes. Lock them out of the system. Immediate suspension under Article 7. Jenna responded without hesitation. Acknowledged. System executing. Complete. At that moment, the phones of all 3 employees lit up. A system message flashed. Your account has been deactivated. Please get in touch with legal affairs. Martin swiped his keycard to open the safe, but the scanner blinked red. Access denied. A chilling silence swept across the lobby like a tsunami after an earthquake. Natalie looked up. There was a spark in her eyes, like a flame just lit. They're fired, she asked. Serena nodded. They fired themselves, Natalie. I'm simply confirming it. And that was the moment the atmosphere of the entire lobby shifted. A minute ago, Serena had been the one under suspicion. Now, she stood at the center of the lobby, dismantling a system she had built, yet never fully seen the shadows it cast. And there was still more work to do. As the key cards changed color, the safe remained sealed, and the hotel's back-end system permanently locked the 3 staff accounts. Orion Luxe no longer felt like a polished sanctuary of silence. It had become an arena, a place of reckoning. And the first voice to break the silence wasn't Serena's. A middle-aged man in a navy blue suit sitting in a lounge chair near check-in raised his hand like he was in a town hall meeting. Excuse me, I know I'm not involved, but I've been here since the beginning. And I want to say I had something similar happen to me here about a year ago. I'm a regular, but that day I wore sweats after a long flight. They said my room had a system glitch. Then I saw someone else check into the same room. He turned to Serena, eyes sincere. I didn't say anything back then, but today I won't stay silent. A young woman standing beside her son spoke up too, at first just whispering to him. But then she raised her head and spoke louder. I was once asked to pay a special deposit because my son was being playful in the lobby before we even made it to our room. No one else was asked that, just me. I'm a single mom, and I kept quiet because I didn't want to cause a scene before him. Her son gripped her hand tightly, his eyes wide. He didn't fully understand, but he knew this moment mattered. Maya Tran, the travel blogger, was still recording, but now she held her phone at chest level, not like a reporter chasing a headline, but as a witness. Jonas shifted the camera to show the entire lobby, capturing the faces beginning to crack, not because they were being insulted, but because they had seen this before, and stayed silent. From the room's far end, an older woman with white hair slowly approached, leaning on her cane. She wore a pale gray suit, neat and straightforward. She stood before Serena for several seconds, saying nothing and just looking. Then she spoke. Thank you, child. Serena bowed her head slightly. I was once kicked out of a hotel in another city, just because I spoke Spanish when calling for a cab. They thought I didn't understand English and judged me. I'm old now and didn't think I'd live to see someone stand up for that. She turned to those who had just spoken up. But today, I don't feel alone. The lobby shifted like a living body, no longer a reception area, but an impromptu forum. The only staff member behind the desk, Natalie, set down her clipboard. She stood beside Serena not as a subordinate, but as an ally. "I've seen this before," she said, not to Serena, but to Martin, Tammy, and Derek, now huddled against the wall. "I've seen VIP names flagged incorrectly in the system and no one double-checked. I've seen procedure used as a shield. And I stayed quiet. Because I needed the job." She swallowed. "But I made the wrong choice. And today, I won't stay silent." Serena turned to look around the room. Over a dozen guests had gathered around her in a semicircle. Some held phones, but not to go viral. They were recording a moment they didn't want to forget. Something had shifted inside them, and they needed to capture it. She stepped forward. Her voice, still low now, carried more weight. "We cannot fix what we refuse to name. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was institutional disrespect. It was a culture of discrimination wrapped in the words, internal policy." She looked at each face, and if no one speaks up, it will continue. It will outlive our fear. But today, at least, I'm not afraid, because I'm not standing alone. Silence fell again. Then a single clap, then another, then a ripple, then the entire lobby. They weren't clapping for a speech. They were clapping for the truth. H finally spoken, and no longer denied. Discrimination doesn't need guns. It only needs enough people to look the other way. But today, those who once looked away turned around. The atmosphere inside the Orion Luxe hotel lobby was no longer just a shockwave of emotion. It had become the site of a reckoning. No paperwork, no formal report. Serena Wallace didn't call an emergency meeting. She didn't wait for recommendations from her subordinates. She was the highest authority. And today, she was personally leading a system-wide purge in front of witnesses. Serena pulled out her phone and tapped a shortcut key. The screen lit up with the words, "Orion Internal, Executive Override Authority." "Jenna," she said through her earpiece, voice cold and surgical, "initiate emergency restructuring protocol under Clause 11B. Suspend all access for accounts linked to Martin Graves. Shut down the online booking system. From this point on, all operations must be manually controlled." On the other end, Jenna responded without hesitation. "Acknowledged. The system will lock in 30 seconds. All access logs are being backed up and flagged for audit." Martin suddenly erupted. "You can't do this in the middle of business hours. This is a hotel, not some political performance." Serena turned back to him without raising an eyebrow. "You made it a stage when you stood at that desk and excluded people like me because they didn't look like you wanted them to. I'm not performing. I'm cleaning up." She turned to Natalie, the only staff member who hadn't bowed her head. "I want you to take over as interim supervisor at the front desk. From now until the reform is complete, all guest concerns will be handled by you. Do you accept?" Natalie blinked, not out of fear, but surprise. A real opportunity handed to her in the middle of a crisis. "I'm ready," she said firmly. Serena nodded. "Good. Log into the system. Activate temporary code GSD Guest Services Director. All guest responses will go through you. I want a report by the end of the day. No middlemen." Natalie returned to the desk and began typing the first commands of a new chapter in the hotel's history. The keys clacked like the opening drum beats of revolution. By now, no one has looked at Serena as a guest. She didn't need a PowerPoint. She didn't need a board meeting. Every sentence she spoke was a directive. Every step she took was a transformation. Maya and Jonas were still recording in the corner of the lobby, but no longer narrating. They captured the truth. A woman who had been dismissed, I was now rewriting how a hotel would operate. Literally. Serena continued. "Jenna, I want to pull every internal complaint from the last 18 months, especially those related to racial, gender, or customer treatment discrimination. Find the cases that were closed quickly. I want to know why. Jenna replied, processing now. You'll have preliminary data within an hour. Also, you should know a large number of reports were closed by Martin without any upper management verification. Serena gave a thin smile. I'm not surprised. Create a folder named Graves Shadow Log. Put everything related in there. I'll review it personally. Martin was nearly unhinged. You're dismantling the entire system. You don't understand the media fallout. You'll destroy our brand. Serena turned fully toward him, stepping closer, voice low. No need to yell. Every word sliced through like a scalpel. I'm not destroying the brand, Martin. I'm saving it. What destroys a brand is you, and people who think like you, believing anyone who doesn't fit the customer image should be removed. He was speechless. Tammy stepped back. Derek had vanished. No one noticed when. Serena turned back to the guests who were still watching, unmoving. I'm sorry not for what I experienced today, but because very likely some of you have experienced the same, and no one stood up for you. She took a deep breath. I won't promise things will change in a day, but I promise this is where it begins. She turned to Natalie. Prepare a notice for all staff. We're reviewing the entire guest protocol training curriculum and complaint history. We're not retraining. We're rewriting everything. Natalie nodded, her eyes ablaze. I'll be the first to sign the new code. In less than 30 minutes, what might have seemed like a minor incident had become an internal earthquake with witnesses' documentation and a vow of change from the founder herself. No one issued commands. No one demanded action. Just one person who dared to do what was right. Just minutes after the system was locked and old management credentials revoked, Serena stood in the middle of Orion Luxe holding full authority. But she knew real power didn't lie in the ability to fire. It lay in the truth. And the truth always leaves traces. Jenna Serena said through her earpiece, eyes fixed on the large monitor near the desk. Begin extracting data from 2 categories. Complaints closed within 24 hours and non-standard guest treatment. Prioritize entries approved by Martin Graves. Jenna, as sharp as ever, replied curtly, You're going to want to see this. A system alert popped up on Serena's phone and was mirrored onto the hotel's large display screen. The first line silenced the entire lobby. 27 customer complaints of discrimination, closed within 12 hours. No response notes. Serena scrolled down. Each line cut deeper than the last. Black guest asked to pay higher than standard deposit. Trans guest denied check-in despite valid reservation. Guest in traditional Asian attire flagged for fake card. Single mother removed from lobby due to noisy child. And beneath each one, MG, resolved. MG, Martin Graves. Serena clenched her fist, not out of surprise, but sorrow. To realize a system she believed was properly trained had been run by someone willing to bend every rule to serve his bias. At that moment, Natalie approached, having just temporarily helped check in new guests. Her voice was steady, but soft. I remember. The woman whose room was canceled at the last minute because her flight was late. I asked Martin if we could make an exception. He looked at me and said, Someone like her in the penthouse. You're too naive, Natalie. She paused. I just laughed and walked away. Because I needed the job. But now I wish I'd said something. Serena looked at her not with blame, but quiet empathy. We can't go back, but we can stop staying silent, starting now. At that moment, Jenna reported something new. Serena. I just received an anonymous email from a former branch manager in Portland. He confirms Martin wasn't acting alone. Serena narrowed her eyes. Go on. The email says that between 2021 and 2023, there was an unwritten directive from a former regional director, Douglas Trent, that any guest who didn't match the brand image should be softly filtered. No official paperwork, but he wrote, "We all knew what it meant. Anyone dressed of color or not, accompanied by white guests, got pushed into secondary protocols." The entire lobby went dead silent. Maya whispered into the live stream. They had an unofficial classification system inside the hospitality industry. Jonas zoomed in on Serena's face, not angry, not emotional, just the quiet, steady cold of someone who had seen everything and had nothing left to forgive. Serena spoke not through her earpiece this time, but aloud for all to hear. We're not just confronting a bad manager. We're confronting a culture that has grown comfortable with systematic exclusion. And the most terrifying part isn't Martin. It's how many people knew and chose silence. A woman in a housekeeping uniform, Lynn. A Vietnamese staffer nervously stepped forward. I was told not to speak my native language during shifts. They said it sounded unprofessional. But I saw white coworkers laugh and joke in Italian and French constantly. Her eyes were red. I didn't think today would be the day I finally said that. Serena nodded. No one will be punished for telling the truth in the place where they work. She turned back to the screen. Jenna. Compile every email complaint and meeting log connected to Douglas Trent. Every trace of this covert policy. Forward it directly to legal and initiate a full Orion-wide audit. No region is exempt. Jenna didn't flinch. Confirmed. All data will be encrypted and marked for Tier 1 internal investigation. This was no longer an isolated incident. This was a systemic fracture. And Serena had no intention of patching it with tape. She would dismantle it, strip it, and rebuild from the foundation. News spread faster than any crisis plan. Even though Serena had never issued a press release, the story of a hotel chain's founder being discriminated against in her property had gone beyond the walls of Orion Luxe within an hour. No hashtags, no PR team, just a phone, a live stream, and unedited truth. CEO treated like a criminal in her hotel, and her response is shaking the entire industry. A headline climbing the trending board on X, formerly Twitter, Orion Grand. An unprecedented revolution in hospitality begins at the front desk. Industry magazine breaking news column. The lobby had now become a gathering point. Guests continued to arrive, but they weren't just here to check in. They came to witness something rare in the luxury service industry. The truth spoken aloud, unfiltered by public relations spin. A group of tourism students from a nearby university had arrived. They stood silently behind the red velvet rope, observing like they were attending a live case study. One of them quietly turned on a voice recorder. The middle-aged man in the navy suit, the same one who had spoken up earlier, was now talking to another guest. He explained that this wasn't internal drama, but a historic milestone in ethical brand management. And at the center of it all, Serena Wallace stood calm and steady. She didn't flinch from cameras. She wasn't performing. Every action and decision was carried out precisely by someone who had been preparing her whole life for this moment. Jenna chimed in. Serena, local news crews are outside. Major outlets like CNN, Reuters, and the Morning Post are requesting interviews. Should we start scheduling responses? Serena looked toward the entrance where camera lights began flickering through the glass. No need to stage anything. If they want to know what's happening, they can walk in. Let them see it precisely as it is. Natalie, now the interim front desk manager, turned to Serena. Aren't you afraid this might go too far? Serena shook her head gently. It should go far because discrimination doesn't end in this lobby. And if we don't let people see its true face, it'll just put on a new mask, and hide inside standard procedures again. At that moment, Maya, the vlogger documenting everything, stepped towards Serena. She didn't raise her camera this time. She said sincerely, "Thank you for not staying silent like so many before you. I'm ready if you need me to share the full original footage unedited." Serena nodded. "I want it. Not to control the story, but to preserve the moment a system was exposed, not by someone shouting, but by someone who stood still." Right then, another update came from Jenna PR, just flagged that we've received over 4,000 emails in the last 30 minutes. Former employees, customers, and journalists. Some say they were victims. Some admit they were silent bystanders. Serena exhaled deeply. She knew the wave had already begun, and it couldn't be stopped. Start filtering. Create 2 lists. Witnesses and clear allegations. Forward both to the legal team for verification. Jenna, we'll need a dedicated internal tracking system, then build one. Call it Orion Reboot. The atmosphere in the lobby had changed, no longer heavy, now focused, transformed. A man pushing a luggage cart approached, dressed in a simple uniform. He spoke softly. "Ms. Wallace, I'm Malik. I work at the Detroit branch. I filed 3 discrimination complaints about co-workers mistreating guests. No one responded. But today, I know I'm not alone." Serena shook his hand, firm and resolute. "You're not alone. And from this day forward, no one at Orion will ever have to feel that way again." Once the world starts speaking up, it's no longer just an internal story. It becomes a lesson. And Serena Wallace wasn't just teaching with words. She was teaching with actions. And everyone was invited to witness. A system doesn't collapse by itself. It collapses when people stop holding it up. And that afternoon, in the main lobby of Orion Luxe, with dozens of witnesses and thousands watching through live streams, Serena Wallace did what few CEOs have ever dared. She tore down the very system she once trusted. "You need to see this." Jenna's voice came through the earpiece. She sent Serena a file titled Trent Audio Log 9. Serena opened it. An old recording, date stamped March 14th, 2022. A regional leadership meeting. A male voice, low, tired, but clear. Douglas Trent, former regional director, was once praised for maintaining Orion's upscale brand image. "We must ensure the hotel doesn't become a haven for off-brand guests. I'm not saying deny them outright, but be subtle. Check their cards thoroughly. Require deposits. Mention safety policies. They'll walk away on their own. Silence. And if anyone on the team complains, send them to me. I'll handle it." A second voice. Martin's quieter, smaller, but unmistakable. "Understood. I'll speak to the team. Some new hires still don't know how to screen people." The audio ended. In the lobby, Serena pressed stop. She looked at Natalie, then at Maya. Then the guests surrounded them. No one said a word. They didn't have to. It was already too clear. Serena walked to the front desk, placed her phone down, and switched to speaker. She called Jenna. "Confirm, is the Trent recording verified with a digital signature?" "Confirmed. Pulled from our backup servers. The timestamp is intact. Legal and compliance teams have it." Serena turned to the crowd, not to explain, to deliver a verdict. There's no more doubt, no more misunderstandings. This wasn't an isolated incident. This was a hidden policy, a culture that was compromised, protected, and enabled by silence. She paused, eyes scanning the faces of those who had been hurt and those now learning how to stand on the right side. And today it ends. Immediately, Serena sent a command from her phone. A system-wide directive lit up on the hotel's massive screen. Emergency executive order. Immediate suspension of business at 9 Orion properties listed in the Trent archive. All regional directors and branch managers associated with Douglas Trent have been flagged for formal investigation. All employees terminated between 2021 and 2023, based on related complaints, will be reviewed for reinstatement. A guest blurted out, "You're shutting down your hotels." Serena nodded slightly. When a system is broken, it shouldn't be preserved. It should be dismantled. We don't fix what's rotten. We tear it down and build what's right. At the far end of the lobby, Malik, the luggage porter from Detroit, stood up, straighter eyes glowing. "You're doing it. I said I would." Serena replied, "And that Orion promises are no longer just PR slogans." Natalie stepped forward, voice trembling with emotion. "What do you want me to do next?" Serena looked her in the eye. The woman who once stayed silent out of fear was now choosing justice. "I don't want you to help. I want you to lead. You'll rewrite the training protocol for the entire chain. Take everything we got wrong and turn it into a lesson, starting right here." Natalie froze. "I don't know what to say." "Say, I'm ready." That's all. Jenna called in again. "Serena, national outlets are breaking the story. Reddit, TikTok, X. Maya's original video has passed 3 million views. The public is calling to boycott every property linked to Trent." Serena nodded. "And they're right. No one should support a brand that doesn't protect its people." She no longer spoke like a CEO. She spoke like someone tearing down a decaying wall to clear space for what should have always existed. That day at Orion Luxe, 3 employees didn't just walk out of a hotel, they walked out of an era. And Serena Wallace, the woman who had once been escorted out of her hotel, had just invited the entire hospitality industry into its reckoning. 3 days after the incident in the Orion Luxe hotel lobby, as videos circulated across social media and the hashtag "This is Orion" ignited nationwide discourse. Serena Wallace didn't hold a press conference. No promises of investigation, no smiling photo attached to a neatly written apology. She held a public dialogue right where everything began. That afternoon, the gray sofa in the guest lounge, once reserved for waiting check-ins, became a seat for an invitation. Serena sat on one side. On the other hand, former guests, former employees, and those once excluded from the Orion system for being off-brand. No official cameras, no stage, just an open mic and a listening circle. "I didn't invite you here to apologize." Serena began, her eyes steady and unflinching. "I invited you here to listen and to act on what I hear." A man of Arab descent dressed in a simple shirt held the mic. "Last year I was denied check-in at Orion Boston. They said the system couldn't find my booking. I had made the reservation 2 weeks in advance, but I was wearing a traditional thobe. The man after me, white and booked late, was welcomed without question." He paused. No anger was left in his gaze, just a weariness that had lasted too long. "I filed a complaint." No one responded. Serena nodded. "What's your name, Sami Malik? You'll have a response within 48 hours, not from PR, but from me, and I'd like to invite you to serve on the guest advocacy board for Orion Rebuild, the initiative guiding our system-wide restructuring." A woman of brown skin, a former receptionist, stood up next. "I was told to stand behind the counter and let someone more fitting take the front. I quit after 3 months." Serena didn't reply right away. She rose, walked to the woman, and handed her a business card. "I can't erase what happened, but I can bring you back this time as the head of inclusive staff training at the branch where you were silenced, if you're willing." The woman hesitated, then burst into quiet tears. In 90 minutes, over 15 people spoke. Each story was a fracture in the system that Serena did not defend, dismiss, or redirect. She let the silenced finally speak. After the dialogue, Serena handwrote not-typed letters to every guest who had filed complaints or been denied service by Orion since 2020. "I'm Serena Wallace. I'm not writing to handle a PR issue. I'm writing to commit. You are the reason we're starting over. And if we hope to earn your trust again, it begins with the truth. If you're open to it, I'd like to meet you. If not, I'll let my actions speak instead of apologizing. At the same time, Serena launched 3 new initiatives. 1. Orion Rebuild, a task force dedicated to rebuilding the system rooted in honest feedback from guests and former staff. 2. Orion Watch, an independent advisory network monitoring internal conduct, including people who have once been discriminated against. 3. Orion First Voice, a program for frontline staff to speak directly without managerial approval. Natalie was now National Director of Customer Experience. Maya, the vlogger who live-streamed the incident, became a transparency advisor, not to polish the brand, but to remind it that a hotel must be honest enough not to fear being filmed. A journalist once asked Serena, "Aren't you afraid all this will hurt revenue?" She smiled. Real reputation doesn't come from avoiding scandal. It comes from how you face it. Orion had once been an expensive brand. Now it was becoming a trustworthy one. And in the service industry, trust is worth far more than money. 3 months after Serena Wallace was denied a room in her hotel, Orion Luxe was no longer the site of humiliation. The lobby was still grand. Marble floors still gleamed. Chandeliers still glittered. But the air had changed. No more chill of judgment. No more eyes calculating who belongs. Only the quiet presence of genuine welcome. Right next to the front desk, a simple black and white photo was framed. Not a posed portrait. Not a brand logo. Just Serena Wallace in her black t-shirt from that day stood upright in the lobby's center. No smile. No bow. Below it read, "We don't serve appearances. We serve people." Orion didn't need to spend millions on PR. The truth became its strongest campaign. In the first leadership meeting after the reform, Serena didn't sit at the head of the table. She pulled up a chair to the middle. The most powerful seat isn't the one at the end, it's the closest to the most voices. The room went silent. Not out of fear, but out of realization. Change wasn't promised. It had arrived. Nationwide Orion locations began to roll out changes. Retraining all front desk staff taught not by consultants, but by those who were once excluded. Not just teaching skills, but teaching new ways to see people. Launching anonymous hotlines for reporting misconduct overseen by an independent guest advisory board. By creating a transparency file, all service denials now require documented justification, which the Fairness Board regularly audits. At the launch of the Orion Forward initiative, Serena stepped on stage. No dramatic music, no MC, just her holding a mic standing like she did that day in the lobby. I used to think success was building a hotel chain. I've learned the harder thing is building a place where everyone feels they belong. She paused. Orion once had the finest rooms in the city, but luxury is meaningless when built on fear and silence. I no longer want guests to feel honored to be allowed in. I want them to know they are always welcome, even if all they carry is their presence. Applause didn't explode, but it was solid, steady, real, like the quiet transformation happening across the system. Serena didn't become a hero. She became a keeper of the flame, a reminder to the entire hospitality industry that hospitality doesn't begin with a smile. It begins with the absence of judgment. Maya Tran, now an independent advisor to multiple hospitality brands, often begins her workshops with a single question. If your CEO walked in today wearing sneakers and a t-shirt, would they be welcomed or screened? Meanwhile, Serena, after leading sweeping reforms, stepped down from day-to-day operations and launched the Wallace Institute, an independent body dedicated to ethics in hospitality. She declined every talk show, refused to write a memoir. When asked why, she smiled, "I don't need to retell my story. I need to make sure it never happens to anyone else." And in hundreds of Orion hotels across America every day, thousands of staff begin their shifts under a slogan posted in the employee lounge: "No one who walks in here is a stranger."